Now, Angela Rippon is right here, and she's shining a light on the importance of a dementia diagnosis. Of course, she spent years caring for her mum, Edna, who had vascular dementia before she died in 2009. It's so good to see you, and isn't it wonderful? We're talking about dementia for years. Nobody would talk about it.
I know. I often tell this story that when I started talking about it back in 2004, when I became an ambassador for the Alzheimer's Society, who helped me enormously with understanding dementia when my mum got her diagnosis, a journalist saying to me, "Aren't you embarrassed to be talking about dementia?"
Gosh.
I mean, people aren't embarrassed to be talking about, I don't know, cancer, Parkinson's, Huntington's, whatever. But no, that was the attitude. There was a great stigma attached to it. And thank goodness, over the past 20 years, we've seen so much in those areas change. And I was chairing the Society's conference just a couple of days ago. And we're at the stage now, because we're in Dementia Action Week, we're at the stage now where we can say that it's really important for people to get a diagnosis on dementia. Now, I know there are lots of people that perhaps think, oh, I don't want to know because I'm a bit frightened of it, and a lot of families who are still in denial about it. But if you can get a diagnosis, what it does mean is that immediately you know what you're dealing with, and you can start planning. You can get your lasting power of attorney sorted out. You can say, well, if this is what I've got, well, why don't we now do the things that perhaps we've been putting off for too long?
Right.
But most importantly, I think it's important for carers, for loved ones, for families, because before my mother was diagnosed and she started to have the symptoms, which I did not recognise as being dementia, she got agoraphobic. She didn't want to go out. She got very argumentative. She got quite vitriolic at times when she was talking to me. We would have terrible arguments. Well, that was really distressing for both of us. But once I realised with the diagnosis that what she had was dementia, I could then think, right, now I understand I'm dealing with a disease, not the person.
Right.
And so when my mum went into, saying things like, oh, I'm going to have tea with your granny this afternoon, I wouldn't say, oh, don't be daft, Granny, Granny died when I was 6, which would have upset my mother terribly. What I was able to do was inhabit my mother's parallel universe just for long enough to make her feel comfortable.
Right.
And then change the subject. And as a carer, I think if you recognise what you are dealing with, that helps enormously to ensure that you and your loved one can start to live well with the disease. And it means that also if you've got a diagnosis, perhaps it means early enough you can start using many of the pharmaceuticals that are available, many of the medications which are now there. And I was at a dinner last night at the Science Museum, which was absolutely fantastic because I was sitting among amazing scientists, including medical scientists, and talking to one in particular who was saying, look, we are this close to getting new drugs which will delay the onset of the worst aspects of dementia, that will give you longer with your loved ones before they get into a critical condition with the disease. All sorts of things that are happening that weren't happening 20 years ago. And I think that there's progress.
There is
and that's
real
good.
progress, but it's so interesting what you talked about there. You've got to have, if you're caring for someone, gosh, you've got to have the patience of a saint, haven't you? You really do. But there's that thing as well of, I think, making sure that they're still included in things, like social situations. And
it's very
just keep an eye on them, but make them feel part of the family.
Well, it's interesting because when you talk to people who have dementia, they very often will tell you, friends that I've had for years fell away. Because they were embarrassed because they didn't know how to deal with me. They didn't know what to do. And that's the wrong thing to do because dementia does not rob you of everything. And it's a gradual disease that takes over gradually, which is why, we say get your diagnosis as soon as you can. And let's get more research into diagnosis so that more people understand what it is and how to deal with it. But if you are still part of your family's entertainment, going out for lunch, going to the theatre, going to the cinema, going down the pub, watching a football game, just do all of those things which keep you an important member of society and a member of your family group. Two of the worst things to affect, not just people with dementia and their carers, beyond the disease itself, is isolation and loneliness.
Which is awful.
Which is dreadful.
That's
that's the worst thing you can possibly do. Keep people involved in, I had Italian friends who had a big family wedding and they said, well, there's no point inviting Granny because she won't know what's going on. I said, no, she's got to go. And afterwards they said it was fabulous. She didn't have a clue who the pretty girl in the white frock was. She didn't know who the young man who was dancing with her was. But she was dancing, she was singing, she was laughing, she was having the time of her life.
Fantastic.
Couldn't remember anything the day after. but she enjoyed the moment.
Yes, in that time.
In that time, she was having a great time. So greater understanding of dementia all round is really important for everybody.
Of course it is. You mentioned dancing and singing, and that's, you know, that can help a lot, can't it?
Just it can.
And you, I mean, for goodness sake, I cannot believe this. Your next birthday, you're going to be 80. Yeah. No.
Yes.
There's been a mistake.
No, it's down. It's all written in black and white there on the birth certificate.
Crazy. Yes. It's absolutely crazy. Because you keep so fit. I mean, we saw earlier on.
Yes.
You know, you're so flexible, but you keep working all the time as well, Angela. You know,
I do. Well, I think that's important as you get older, that you do that. And I mean, what we were doing with the doctor, who's laughing at me now. He's still aching, I can tell you.
He's still aching.
I mean, that's really important as we get older. I mean, keeping your brain going, learning another language, doing something that challenges your brain helps to keep dementia at bay. But keeping fit and exercised as well is really important, because one of the things we touched on when we were talking is the importance of balance. As we get older, if you lose balance, you lose strength in your hips and in your legs, you're likely to fall over. And if you fall over and you break a hip, you break a wrist, because perhaps you've got a touch of osteoporosis as you get a little bit older as well, the knock-on effect of that, of having the trauma of the accident, the trauma perhaps of surgery, of then not being able to walk properly, it can really devastate your later lives. So if you can keep fit and strong as you get older, that really is important. Apart from anything else, it's our way of helping the National Health Service, every one of us, because you know, if we're not ill, if we're not going into hospital, if we can take responsibility ourselves for our health, then we'll save millions. Which, you know, and dance really is really important.
Dance, and how we loved to watch you dance last year.
Thank you.
It was fantastic. I know it's 20 years of Strictly, but you will always be, you know, in the best moments that we enjoyed. It was wonderful.
I have a wonderful partner in Kai
He's great, isn't he? And you're so pals.
We've become great pals when you consider there's a 51-year age difference between us. He's 28 and I'm 79.
And you exhausted him.
No, I
exhausted. Angela, thank you. So good to see you.
Pleasure.
Wise words. Thank you so much.